Hello and welcome to Yutani. This is the second episode of our Raised by Wolves series. We'll be reviewing episodes 2 and 3. I'm Connor Colson and this is Clara, aka Mother.
Hi everybody.
We've covered the trailers, if you haven't seen that before. We've covered episode 1. Now I think the plot's starting to actually unravel. We're starting to see some more complex, more interesting pieces because if you've watched everything so far, I have not been a fan, but I think it's starting to get my attention.
Yeah, it took a while to kind of get going for me as well. Um, I, because I'd gone from like watching like really well produced sci-fi down to something which was made for television. It was kind of like a shock factor where it's like, wow, this is bad.
Yeah, yep. It was just oof. What is this?
But yeah, I feel like the story is worth following and it's progressing quite well. And the fact that Ridley Scott has directed the first 2 episodes, it has really kind of plunged me into the sort of Ridley Scott directorial feel, which I really enjoy. So it's a little guilty pleasure of mine to just go with it.
Episode 2 is called Pentagram. There we go. So
I was
first
going to
one.
say it's Pentagram.
No, it was just lag on my computer's part. Anyway, so yes, Raised by Wolves, and then Pentagram, and then Virtual Faith. So, yes, there we go. I know what I'm talking about. I don't really know why it's called Pentagram. There was nothing satanic. Sadly, got all excited, but not even Wiccan. So,
Yeah. I don't know why it was called that either. So yeah,
I guess we should do a bit of an overview of what happens in this episode. We are following Travis Fimmell's character, Marcus, and the woman's character. I don't remember her name. I don't know the actress either. So we begin with them as soldiers during this war on Earth, we presume. And they just happen to have the right build and general appearance of Travis Fimmell's character and stand. Okay. So they find this android who is mostly functional. He's all burnt up, but he's still in one piece. And I quite like him. His name's Albert. That's the one android I like in this whole show so far. And he performs some kind of Star Trek style plastic surgery on them. And that's really interesting because it's like there's this laser torch thing and it cuts their face open, but not really. And then he bandages their face up and then it changes. I don't know.
So we get like a resistance style view of the war in the future. For some reason, they are wearing, helmets that are reminiscent of like the Knights Templar and stuff like that. So it's very, it's going with like that clothing aesthetic again with the Mithraics and stuff like that. There seems to be like a lot of ash in the air, like we saw in like the other sort of flashbacks. Going on the point with like the android being able to do plastic surgery, I think it's also like another interesting point of view about the androids like not having a soul or what is being and what is being human, when you can just easily change your face or change your body or
well, assaulted carbon. Oh well. I've almost finished the first season of that and I love it. But in this particular scene, what was most interesting to me, because I'm always looking at the AI, is his sort of, or its ethics in terms of, I think it actually works for the Mithraics because it's got the that star-shaped symbol. So I don't think it's one of these guys, the rebels, the atheists. I don't think it's one of theirs. But I'm not sure. That's the thing I'm not really sure about. So these imposters, are they atheists or were they just not chosen to go on the ark? because they're not wearing white uniforms, they're wearing black. So
I believe they're atheists
uh,
because they do have a flashback about being child soldiers.
mm,
So I think that it's showing, like they're all everyone's kind of like putting on a show and like pretending to be something that they're not.
mm.
And so are the androids because they're pretending to be human, they're not human.
So that's what makes this Albert character especially interesting, is that he doesn't pick a side. He's a medical android, and he basically has no problem with these characters going through private data and then saying, hey, can you make us look like someone else so that we can do something criminal? And it's just like, yeah, sure, no worries, get on the table. So I think it might be one of those things where it's kind of a loophole where, well, why would an android need to have these particular protocols in place? It's a very specific situation with very specific variables. So yeah, maybe they just got lucky.
Oh, well, plastic surgery having to be like a medic out in the field of war, it probably was important. But like, I think a lot of the show's themes kind of explore the fact that things were made for a particular reason, but then people go and use it in the way it wasn't intended. And
Yeah.
that has like hazardous and dangerous consequences.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So this android is probably made only for first aid, but is now being made to use for plastic surgery, and has absolutely no problem with someone being like, "Can you make me look like this person so I can take their place on an arc to go into space and get off this planet?" Yeah. I guess it just doesn't think in those terms. And then Mother is also another one where she has been created as a necromancer. She is a being of war, and now she's made to raise children, and that's not going so well. So yeah, I think maybe there is a recurring theme there.
Yeah. Uh, I like one of the scenes, like when they open up the robot at first and they're showing an X-ray of a chest cavity, and I was expecting to see a chest burster.
Oh yeah.
Because Alien franchise. Um, it's interesting how the android is also kind of reminiscent of like the Terminator with like the half destroyed face, the robotic eye,
Yeah, it's
the
truly
teeth.
freakish. I love it. It looks like, well, in certain shots when it's just him doing the surgery, I think it's real hands. I think the head is real, but a lot of the torso and stuff is CGI, like they're taking things out. So I'd love to see behind the scenes how that costume was done. I imagine it's almost like,
Remember,
uh,
like green suit, kind of like when
no,
David got decapitated in previous.
I was thinking more like in Ex Machina, Ava, the way they did that and sort of extracted pieces from within.
Oh,
Maybe a bit of Furiosa in Mad Max. So just, yeah, you have all the exterior bits of the mechanical stuff, but you're just making it look more hollow or light or, yeah, transparent, whatever it is. And yeah, I'm very fascinated by the sorts of visual effects. I think, well, subtracting rather than adding is a lot easier, but I also think it's more fascinating to me for some reason. I don't know why.
I think as well, a lot of things that the show centers around is the theme of eyes, and being able to like put the contact in and then change their eyes permanently as opposed to temporarily.
That would be cool.
It's kind of like the eyes are the window to the soul. That's how like they identify each other. It's an interesting concept that they're visiting, and that's sort of like that mental anguish when I forgot her name,
It's
takes
just
her bandages off and she starts freaking out.
yeah.
I thought that was like really realistic and cool
That was
because
very effective. I think that was really well performed. And that's something you don't get in Altered Carbon, because it's a world where everyone's got replaceable sleeves, and this has been the case for centuries. So there isn't any of that horror. Like most of the time, it's just oh, I've been cross-leaved. Now I'm a man. Oh God, it's like it's an inconvenience. It's not Jesus Christ. I can't handle this. My brain is just going to break into a million pieces. No, it's just oh well.
And
Whereas, yeah, I think that would the human mind is not made for that. That's terrifying.
yeah, I also like love where they've had all of the sets, like the abandoned buildings. There's lots of sand. They're like the worlds are like well lived in, which
Hmm.
Ridley Scott was really well known for in Blade Runner and Alien, setting the tone with the sci-fi. Nothing's clean cut, um, except for when you see the Mithraics and their arc and things like that.
White and shiny.
Yeah, it's kind of
I,
like a clash between Star Wars and Star Trek, you know?
I was thinking about the post-apocalyptic world and how we depict that in fiction, and they all tend to look the same. It's that sort of grey, grungy, rundown sort of thing. Or you have that kind of Last of Us look where it's been abandoned for a long time. So vegetation and wildlife starts to come back into these urban areas.
Mm.
And it's one of those things where you go, is there any way to make it look different? Is there a way to do a unique spin on the post-apocalypse? Because it seems like you've only got like a few flavors of this. You've got your sort of urban version, your kind of Terminator future, you've got Mad Max, and then you've
Oh,
got
you've also got like nature overgrown, like I Am Legend.
yeah, that's what I was saying. So you got your three. There's Mad Max, Terminator, and Last of Us, or I
Oh
Am.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't really know what else you can do with it, unless it was an animation and then you can do really stylistic things. But I guess here, the thing that makes it unique is just that it's very white. There's no, if there is a color filter, it's actually making everything look more neutral.
Mm.
So, or beige, if you will. So I actually kind of like that. What do you do with these environments? And I think the cinematography in these environments is a lot better than what we saw with Mother and on that planet.
Mm.
Um, Kepler, there we go. Yeah, the stuff on
Yeah.
Kepler I think just looks really washed out. This, for whatever reason, is working for me better. Maybe it's because it's a lot more semi-indoor spaces. So when they enter this other building, you've got these sort of guard rays coming down. And there's about
Mm.
7 minutes into the episode. And oh, also, there's a detail in this minute. There's a painting.
Oh yeah, with the cross upside down.
I can't see what it is. So what? Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's like it almost reminds me of in Game of Thrones. I can't remember which house it has the flayed man
Oh yeah.
banner. It reminds me of that. So you can kind of see. And I'm tilting my head like a dog. Sorry. Um, yeah. So I can see a figure. I guess it could be a Christ-like figure. And there's stuff around. I think there's like two figures. I'm kind of seeing two white faces there, but I've no
Yeah.
idea. It might be a real painting. I don't know what it's referring to.
I'm gonna have to look it up, but it kind of conjures up the imagery of like Jesus on the cross. A lot of
Mm.
like, those who, sin against God, God will burn in hell and suffer torture,
Oh,
etc.
damnation. Which, oh
Um,
man, I could do a whole episode of just reviewing how heaven and hell modern pop culture ideas. Because if you look at the Bible, it's basically it's too complicated and too much to explain right now. But absolutely nothing like what you think. Heaven, hell, purgatory, they're all relatively new concepts. And the Bible isn't actually all that interested in those. It's more about just what humans are doing on Earth. So,
but one thing that really upset me was seeing all the pets being left behind. um,
not fair.
yeah, like all of the dogs and like all the animals. Because like I guess the Mithraic belief is that their lives are not worth it. It'd be too hard to keep them alive and bring them to another planet.
So that's the interesting thing is we finally learned that they worship Sol. And Sol is the Norse or Germanic god of the sun. That's where we get, Sol, solar system, all of that. Why then, is there communion? Why are we seeing crucifixes? Why? I don't really know. The only theory I probably have is that it's like a hybridized religion. And you do see these in real life sometimes where one religion or culture is colonized and then you get these weird hybridizations. And especially uh, there's various versions of Christianity throughout Africa, and they're really interesting. Like there's one that believes in the Enochian texts. So that's the Book of Enoch is considered apocryphal by most sects of Christianity. And but they're really into it, and it's all about angels. Specifically, I think it's Enoch himself becomes an angel, which that's not how everyone else sees it. So I could absolutely imagine that you have a situation where there's some kind of colonization or cultural influence going on there, and then that culture is separated from the general group of Christianity, and then we have soul and all that. So I would say that the world building has me intrigued now. There's something interesting going on here.
There's this part where a father is being resurrected, and it's really interesting that this sort of like, I guess, processor kind of just looks like a little kidney or a liver.
Yeah.
It's not what we're used to in terms of like robots in any sort of sci-fi setting, where it's usually like a chip or something like that. So I think it's interesting how they've chosen that sort of shape or that sort of representation as a body part. In human body parts, the liver can like regrow, which is quite an interesting thing. I don't know whether there's some symbolism.
I did not know that.
In that, well, you know, it goes with the myth of Prometheus.
That's what I was about to say. I thought that was just a thing that gods could do, that they regrow their liver. Well, I guess.
Yeah, let me look it up while you think about that.
So we'll just, because we jumped ahead a little bit, so I'll just fill everybody else in on. So yes, the imposters steal the faces of the people that they eventually murder and take their place on the Mithraic ship Heaven. There we go. And they meet their now son they've accidentally adopted. And that relationship's quite interesting, that we don't know what his actual real parents were like. So this kid's name is Paul, easy to remember because of Dune, which is coming out soon. And
I'm getting like a lot of Dune vibes with this desert planet as well, with the holes and everything.
So Paul, we sort of get a hint from him that his parents were probably assholes. But
well, they were the stereotypical strict Catholic parents, from my experience. That, you know, children don't speak unless spoken to. They were very like hard up into their religion, so much so that the father would go and join the war, and then the mother would, you know, spend copious amounts of time in prayer. Probably didn't have much of a childhood, you know, experience with his real parents, which is, it's really interesting to see this sort of like dynamic flourish between the fake parents and the child.
Yeah.
Which also brings up, you know, the sorts of ideas where, you know, mother's not the real mother, but she cares about the children. And obviously she's not the real mother, but she cares about Paul. So.
Yeah. Which is a nice change from, let's say, for example, Once Upon a Time, where the message was always, you know, your adoptive mother might spend all this time and money raising you, but your deadbeat mom who shows up after like 15 years, no, she's your true mom and she loves you more than anything. What the hell, Disney?
Yeah, Disney, come on. Get real. So the liver is the only visceral organ that possesses the capacity to regenerate. The liver can regenerate after either surgical removal or after chemical injury, and it's known that as little as 51% of the original liver mass can regenerate back to its full size.
Oh my God, I had no idea. That's so cool.
It is.
So if you must commit cannibalism, if you're in a really extreme situation, just take half of the liver and just wait, and then you can, liver, though it tastes so bad.
Oh, I love the taste.
I'm okay with liver jerky, but eating just normal cooked liver, no, nothing. It's just too much.
It needs chili.
Yeah. So we see the opening theme and opening credits, I should say, for the first time, and it is the most complicated song I have ever heard. It's not one that's going to get stuck in your head. It has the most erratic chord progression, if you will. It's fascinating. And I'm wondering if that's almost intentional. It has this synthetic or inhuman quality to it that is just kind of jumping all over the place. It's not just like a melody.
The person who does the soundtrack or the music to this show did the music for Dark, as I said in the previous episode.
Yeah.
It is amazing compositions using human voices in a way that you wouldn't think would be kind of like relaxing. It's kind of haunting in a way.
It is, yeah.
I love the sort of feeling it kind of gives you. There's a sense of like calm, but uneasiness at the same time.
I think they've tried to make the animation look like charcoal drawings. I don't really know how they did it. I think it's just digital.
Yeah, I think it's a filter because I've seen all of these scenes without this look.
But they're gorgeous. I think these days we have so few opening credit sequences that are actually, a full-on credit sequence rather than just title, little bit of music, go into it. So yeah, I like that they put the effort in.
The thing about Mother covering her eyes definitely reminds me of like, Justice.
Yeah.
Or the Statue of Justice, like.
And she always does it after she does the whole necromancer thing, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very freaky. Even the android she's like taking the eyes from kind of reminds me of Cain. Like the face structure looks so much like Cain from Alien, but obviously like the headless android thing is more of Ash.
Yeah.
But there's Easter eggs everywhere in this show. I think it would be hard to not find something that's connected to Alien in some sort of way, even loosely.
So yeah, the eye thing is really bizarre that I don't know. I don't know why she took them out the first time. I get why she has to swap them out now because she's deciding I don't want to have this power at all times. But yeah, okay, I'll just go along with it.
Again, the white android blood. Yeah, I think it's a nice, easy Ridley Scott universe trope that I can get with.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like we see a lot of android blood, a lot of human blood, a lot of like violence. So we have like these two warring sides, but I'm kind of like observing both of them, and they both just look like they're trying to survive.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like they're as cruel as they try to make each other out to be. I think that's another comment that Ridley Scott has made in the past in regards to people of faith. Everyone seems to be worshipping all these different gods, but when you go back to the roots of all of it, they might find that they're all worshipping the same deity.
Deity. Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of funny. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it's all the same texts that it comes from. And then if you want to go further back, like the story of Noah actually comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh, or maybe even earlier than that. So it's all got a common ancestry. Now, what I'm learning in this episode is that the thing I really hate about this show is Mother. I just think she has the most punchable face. She's annoying. I just hate her. She's awful. I just don't like her. But the rest of the show, well, not incredible. I have actually become more invested in, and I'm curious to see where it goes. So yeah, it's just what I compared it to. I mentioned this in a chat ages last week, I think. There's a show Devs, which kind of flew under the radar, but it's by Alex Garland, who's done Ex Machina and Sunshine and all sorts of stuff. And that's about artificial intelligence and using that to predict the future. Really, really great show, except main character, absolutely awful. Hate her. She ruins every moment she's in. Lily. And I would like to review that at some point. It's just...
I really enjoyed Devs. I didn't
Yeah.
get as annoyed with her as a lot of other people did, because it's funny that you should say that, because so many people came up to me and it's like, this actor completely ruined it for me, and I'm like, wow, like I didn't think it was that bad, but
Yeah.
maybe it's like it just doesn't register on my radar, like shitty personalities.
Yeah, maybe. I was so aware that she was acting at all times. I did not believe her as a character. It was just basically, oh, now I must stop the time travel thing. Not, I don't want to get into spoilers or anything, but, and there's a conspiracy. So ex-boyfriend, you must help me. Jesus Christ. I just don't understand how you can so spectacularly miscast your lead character, especially when it comes to, I'd say both these directors, but especially when it comes to Ridley Scott. I think he's got a really good eye for actors, and for him to choose this Amanda Collin. It's not even Collins, it's just Collin, a singular. Oh, okay. I'm being petty now. Yeah, Amanda Collin. I don't know. I've never seen her in anything else. I don't know how she is as an actor in general, but in this character, she's just yikes.
It makes me wonder whether they cast her because Ridley Scott had a certain look in mind for who he wanted as his lead. Like, she kind of reminds me of Evan Rachel Wood in Westworld, but with shaved hair.
Oh, the thing that freaks me out the most, though, is she has, I can't remember, there's a particular name for this posture, but where someone just like bends their spine all the way forward, that she looks like she's pregnant because she's just like sticking her guts out, and it's like bendy spine. She looks like,
oh yeah, she sits with her hips out. Like,
yeah, like got the butt
like to
out.
the front.
And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, I just don't like that. Like, what are you... It looks painful. It's freaking me out. Please stop. Because I guess some people go, oh, I must stand like an android, very straight posture, and then they just go a little too far and keep leaning back. Father has perfect posture. He looks fine. He's less annoying to me. I mean, I know, I think he's annoying by design, telling all those obnoxious jokes and stuff. That's clearly written into the character, whereas with Mother, what am I supposed to feel about her other than I want to punch your face?
I don't know, but like, who's it? The kid, the oldest kid. I just want to punch his face.
What, Camp? Or the oldest adopted new recruit?
Yeah, the oldest new recruit.
Yeah, and he's got this weird, what do you call it? Like what they call flavor saver. That I have not had to use that word in a long time. Just a little bit of neck fluff, chin to neck fluff around like that region. Not quite a neck beard, but you know what I mean. And don't approve. I have to take a whole star off the show just for that.
Yeah.
Could have been 5 stars. No, actually, that makes sense. That clock. So could have been 5 stars. Got to remove a star for Mother, and then I got to remove another star for that kid's flavor saver. Yeah, 3 stars. All works out.
It's interesting. Mother taking all of their talismans. It's something that David did in Prometheus. Talking about the symbolism of robbing a person of their faith, and kind of exposing them to this atheistic lifestyle. In a lot of ways, this show kind of poses pros and cons of both worlds.
Yeah.
Kind of leaves it up to us to decide, whose side are we on, or whose morals fall in line with ours.
I was thinking about how cyberpunk it's very popular as a genre right now. That's generally how we depict the future. Even Star Trek is now cyberpunk. weirdly enough, with Star Trek Picard. And that focuses on the inequalities caused by capitalism. Whereas I think this show is focusing exclusively on religion as this kind of ultimate downfall of humanity, and that's what will cause the apocalypse. And that's very unusual. What it reminds me of is probably Dune, or those sort of science fiction, science fantasy kind of stories. And I think that's the main issue with, or at least my connecting to this story, is the feeling that this is a fantasy. This is not a possible future. Whereas, to mention also Carbon again, because that's the only thing I've been watching. Well, I've been watching that and Transformers. Don't ask. I'm just trying to prove a theory with Michael Bay's films. Anyway, my theory was that the worst thing is just that they're too long and that too much is happening at once, and there's no subtitles, so you don't know when you're watching in the cinema. You don't know what's happening. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out if there is a way to watch the Transformers movies in a way that makes sense. Anyway, yeah, Altered Carbon feels like a very possible future in the discussions it has about capitalism, the body, our relationship to each other, just everything. It changes when you add these sort of very plausible changes, a natural progression, if you will. Whereas the idea of religion suddenly becoming this very, I don't know, centralized part of our lives again, that doesn't seem possible. And that it would lead to war, and it would lead to this sort of future. It's asking you to take some extra steps, and that to me means that it would be more likely to be categorized as science fiction fantasy rather than science fiction.
In this episode, they're still harvesting the carbos. That, like, it's so weird, the naming conventions for all these things. Carbos as in carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Not very imaginative. But it looks like this aloe vera growing out of the ground. It's a peculiar, like, I guess it's a very like cheap sort of plant that they could have used to use, and it kind of looks like it would grow on an alien planet. It's arid, there's no need for a lot of water, things like that. But again, these crops were there when they arrived, so it's very peculiar. Like, they don't even like mention anything. They don't go, wow, it's strange that all of these things were planted here.
Yeah.
You know, there's not that natural human observation or curiosity. They just accept things for what they are, and they're like, oh yes, the temperature seems right here, let's have our house here, it makes sense. It's very peculiar. Because like in every other kind of sci-fi, like there'd be a search party, that someone go out and do things and kind of explore the place and map things out, and the androids just don't do that.
Yeah. Although I guess, well, from a screenwriting perspective, I'm just wondering if it's just trying to, make not even a mystery out of it, but just sort of push that to the side for the moment, so that maybe they don't want us to think about that just yet. The idea of there's possibly three factions at play here. There's probably the androids, the humans, and then native aliens to this planet. Who knows? And we've already seen the methed out golem, so maybe that's what was living here, and then they got mutated. Who knows? Because if what they're eating is, I guess that's a bit of a spoiler for the next episode, but whatever. It turns out that the food is irradiated, which, how the hell do you not detect that? They're like, oh, we only checked the outside of these seeds, but not the insides.
Yeah,
Why?
and then we store these things after we've picked them in this silo, and then for some reason, you know, like all the food would then irradiate each other, and then we'd eat, and then the kids would eat them all. Like, I guess maybe
Surely an android can just look at something and go, well, the ambient radiation around that is deadly to humans, so maybe not.
Yeah.
Kind of some bullshit there, but okay. So, yeah, well, that was the initial mystery of, is Mother poisoning them? Is this some kind of vegan propaganda show? Is this... no, so it just turns out radiation bad. Don't eat don't need radiation.
Um,
And
I'm kind of finding it interesting when Campion kind of holds the mouse for a little while, and then the bigger kid goes to say like, no, you have to give the mouse to him. And I don't know what that's about. Is that the same thing about leaving the animals behind? Like you're not supposed to have any
yeah,
possessions?
yeah, because I was confused about that at first, and now having seen the rest of it and knowing that Paul isn't really supposed to have pets, culturally this doesn't seem to be a thing that the Mithraic people do. Maybe that's the issue where the kids are going, well, why have you got a pet? You know, you're not supposed to treat animals like that. They seem to just sort of, yeah, they don't have souls. They don't have any value beyond possibly food and clothing and all that. But oh yeah, so with the irradiated food, I'm wondering if that's going to tie into that golem-looking creature, and turns out maybe that was mutated by the food supply. So that's my theory.
Yeah. I also find it kind of weird that Mother kind of just stands there looking up at the sun. Is she like solar powered or something?
That's my theory. In episode 1, she shuts down, and then Campion lies with her in the sun, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm fine. Let's keep going." Okay, that's one problem I have with this show. It's just they're not really saying any, they're not. There's no dialogue that's really conveying what the hell's going on. So that scene, and then what was the one we were just talking about where they didn't? Oh yeah, just they stumble upon some perfectly, impossible in nature crop formations, and it's like, yeah, okay, we'll live here. No one's gonna think about, okay. So we do see, I think, in this episode more discussion on how would you say it's sort of making commentary on real church and religious issues. So in this one, there's a teenage girl and she has been sexually assaulted. She's actually pregnant, and it was one of the clergy. I think it was like I can't remember, he was a deacon or a bishop, or he was like fairly high up in their clergy. And yeah, he was just doing that, and no one stopped him. And they knew about it. So I can see, yeah, Ridley Scott has definitely got some things to say about the Catholic Church in particular, I guess.
I think he's got a lot to say about both sides, that they all seem like hypocrites in terms of their belief system, or what they believe is right and what they believe is wrong.
Yeah, and
he's obviously he's visiting like some concepts are good, like there are good parts of religion, but there are also plenty of bad ones as well.
yeah, and so having seen more of this show, I think I'm actually coming to appreciate that more, because in the first episode you're going, well, whose side is this on? It's not really a positive depiction of either atheists or believers, and yeah, I couldn't really work out where it's trying to go with that. Now I'm starting to see that it's possibly trying to show, yeah, the pros and cons of both, and it'd be interesting to show the cons of atheism, because I think most people are probably steering away from faith these days. You know, statistically, most people don't follow any sort of organized religion, but I think what happens with atheism, it's not atheism itself that's a problem. It's that kind of what's the word, like materialism, where like everything has to be something that you can quantify and define and study, and anything that doesn't fall into that category just doesn't exist and isn't worth discussing. So, you know, a lot of the experiences of the human mind, for instance. So yeah, that would be interesting, but I mean, well, most of the kids from the original family, if you will, aren't around anymore. So that's a shame, because it would be interesting to put these groups of kids together, and the atheist kids just don't have any imagination. They don't put any value in the non-physical, I guess. And then
Well, they kind of
kids,
talk about that when they were in the sim on the ship, isn't it? Because the kid's like building a city, and the father's
yeah,
like, oh, that's good, you know, that's very creative. And there's like, yeah, I'm not allowed to do this. Like, I'm
oh
not allowed
yeah,
to think for myself, I'm not allowed to create.
Well, that's weird because you'd think with well, I mean, depending on what religion it is, because obviously in Islam, there's in their artwork there are no depictions of people or animals. It's all very abstract, kind of mosaic looking
Mm.
prints, basically. But yeah, I think perhaps the kids who are of this soul religion, it would have been nice to sort of put the two groups together and say, oh, well, the kids are able to have hope and faith and imagination with religion where they can't with the particularly militant atheism with the android parents. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see where Ridley comes down in this debate, because I think it is, well, it is debatable. I don't think there's a real easy way to just boil this down to this perspective is this and this perspective is that.
Mm.
I've only got like 3 points in my notes, and yet I have been able to talk about this episode a while.
It's okay. It's kind of good that this show has a lot to kind of contemplate because it does bring up heavy hitting subjects in a way that people can talk about them without relating it to their own personal biases in terms of religion and belief and science and stuff like that.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's not. Well, I think that's one advantage also of making it this religion about soul, is that it's not, specifically, well, you, this group in the modern day are the problem.
Yeah. I also think it's really interesting with a mother trying to protect um, the child who is pregnant,
Yeah.
um, saying that all life is significant and has value, which I believe um, in our like reality, I guess, like in a way that people are very pro-choice,
Mm.
so that they're more about the mother's decision,
Yeah.
um, and you kind of do see a mother slowly change her mind,
Mm.
which is interesting. She's not like hardlined, where like, oh no, you must only do it this way.
Yeah.
Um, she kind of like takes information and goes, okay, well, obviously, this isn't working, and we should consider something else. Whereas I don't believe in um, a lot of people of faith who are like pro-life can
Mm.
kind of take that sort of feedback on. They're like, oh no, it doesn't say this in the Bible, or it doesn't say this in our beliefs, so you
Yeah.
can't do it. There's no room for movement.
I think though that that's just mother being manipulative. This girl's just like, I don't want this child, I hate it, and she's telling her everything she needs to hear to be convinced to give birth to this child, because that's all that mother cares about.
Mm.
And
Yeah, she has been programmed that way.
yeah, and it's funny though, because if a species gets under a population of 900, they actually know specifically 900 is about as small as a population can get before irreversible inbreeding it takes place. There's only what, a dozen, maybe 2 dozen humans left in the entire universe now. So why are you bothering? Just give up. There's no point. You're basically just preserving what's there. You're not making it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know the dynamics of um, genetic deformities in terms of like the limited breeding pool.
Yeah, well, their numbers are so small, they would not last maybe more than a few generations. Whereas cheetahs, they all look exactly identical, down to every individual spot. A cheetah is a clone of any other cheetah. And that's because I don't know how many, millions of years ago it was, cheetah's population fell down below that 900 number. Um, but clearly not to the point that inbreeding was too much of a problem. It's just that they're all identical. You're not going to get any genetic diversity, although there's some speculation this might cause more issues as the generations progress. So I find all that stuff really fascinating. And this
I'm
show,
still trying to figure out how Mother floats.
she's made of very light stuff, 3D printed, all plastic, all that sort of stuff. And you just put some like helium in there or something. She's just stuff.
Yeah, she's just full of hot air.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's that, or there is probably some sort of magnetic repulsion from the Earth. That's been a what do you call it? Proposed means of making these kind of land speeders before. So yeah, maybe she's got something like that.
Mm.
And, oh,
In the this episode, we like see the like animals close up for the first time because Campion, like, so there's this belief in the real and the unreal that is always being brought up in this show, and Campion didn't believe that these creatures existed
mm,
because he was under the impression that it was just another, lie made up by mother and father to try to keep them safe or to try to make them stay in the village. And it brings up the whole idea of like, how did myths come about or how did stories come about? And they were all to try to control a population. It's easier to tell
yeah.
a story than say, this is the list of rules that you must follow. If you're telling these stories from a very young age right up till their adulthood, then obviously it would like leave an impression on the children. They're more likely to remember the story than they would to remember a list of rules.
Mm.
So we're seeing like the evolution of like storytelling as well throughout the series, and then how it affects communities, and in this case it affects the atheist community.
Yeah, that's interesting because you would think these androids wouldn't have the storytelling and using those sort of superstitions and stuff to control these kids that they're trying to raise as atheists and skeptics and all of that. So there's a little bit. So to me, I would think these things should be the opposite, where the Mithraic kids should have all the stories and the superstitions and all that. But no, it's the way Ridley's decided to depict these two cultures is kind of surprising. But this discussion has basically made me realize that every science fiction that Ridley Scott does, well, almost every single one, it's kind of bullshit on the surface, but then if you look deeper into it, you go, oh, actually, no, there's some good commentary there, especially with the Alien prequels, where on the surface, a lot of people don't like them. I like them. But I think if you do start reading into it a little bit more, you just go, oh, so there's a lot more thought put into this, that it is trying to say things. It's just that surface level story, man. I don't know. It's got some issues.
And that's why I love the prequels, because you can kind
Mm.
of dig into them and kind of find all the juicy pieces to interpret in many different ways.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's the advantage of Raised by Wolves being a series, is that I'm not getting all of that at once. So when I watched episode one, I just went, well, hang on, but the implication of this, I don't see where that could go. That doesn't make sense, and so on. And then getting into episode 2 and 3, I realized, oh, right, that's what you're trying to. Aha, okay, so I can see the underlying themes. There is a purpose here. There is, yeah, it is properly thought out.
Yeah, it gives it room to breathe, and it kind of puts a certain moral of the story between each group of episodes. So
Mm.
in Australia, how we are receiving it is that we got the first 3 episodes of Raised by Wolves. Um, so we did the coverage for the reaction, and we did the coverage for episode 1, but now we're going to be doing coverage for episodes 2 and 3 in this one, because
We'll probably move
basically,
along to episode 3 soonish.
yeah, it's really interesting. So in episode 3, they're talking about being able to defend themselves from any threat,
Mm.
uh, them being the animals because they were just attacked in the episode before. It's interesting because like Mother kind of outs the whole idea that Tempest is pregnant without consulting her first. She doesn't have any sense of uh,
Privacy.
yeah.
Hmm.
Everyone needs to know everything at all times. But yeah, she uses the ideas of stories to try to preach to the children how they should better live their lives. And it's interesting that she would choose a story like the Three Little Pigs, because we all know it as like some sort of like very basic story that we've all been familiar with. I think pretty much nearly everyone in every culture would have a story that's very similar to that, or everyone would know the story. Uh, but it's a good moral, And I don't know, like, I think we were talking about the symbolism in that when we were doing the reaction for the trailer, because they featured her telling the story as part of the trailer, talking about whether it was a house of straw, or a house of sticks, or a house of bricks or stone. I don't know whether it talks about stories and faith being built on a good foundation will then give you a better civilization, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really at this point understand what the choice or why they made that choice of using the three little pigs. And she tells that whole damn story from beginning to end. So I think that's maybe something we can only speculate on until we see the entire picture. But yeah, maybe about making foolish choices, bad foundations, whatever it is. I mean, that probably makes sense. You know, this civilization based its society on religion. This society based its this civilization based its society on science and reason, and so on and so forth. So maybe that's what they're trying to say. And then a wolf comes along and blows the houses down. I don't know how that one works. This is pretty much every science fiction movie that Ridley Scott's done has cryo in it, some sort of cryo sleep. So yes, we see cryopods that don't really look like anything we've seen before in at least Ridley's movies.
They kind of look like the cryo beds in Alien.
It's got
arranged in a row.
kind of 60s, 70s, all white, very sleek kind of look.
Yeah.
And then we find everyone living, the Mithraic people living in this sort of virtual world while they're asleep, which I wonder why. I mean, as a storytelling convention, I think that works really well. That, oh, well, these characters are going to be in cryo this whole time and they're going to show up on the planet. So how do we get any sort of drama or story out of those characters? Oh, well, they're actually conscious in a virtual world. That's actually, I'd say that's a pretty clever solution.
Yeah, and we kind of get a glimpse of what that was like in Prometheus through Elizabeth Shaw's dreams, although they seem to be like more impressionistic than realistic. In this simulation, everything looks and feels to the characters quite real. It's interesting that their new plastic fantastic selves has kind of transferred across in consciousness to the simulation, because I was thinking, wait a minute, their brain is still the same but the face is different. But now in the simulation,
I guess if we're going by Matrix rules, that you've got this particular image of yourself, well then, I could say that it's very, very important to them that they look a certain way to everybody else. So I think that makes sense that they're projecting this image. But it could be a more literal thing where the cryo bed just scans the individual and makes an avatar based on what it sees in that bed.
That's true.
Everyone wears all white. I think from now on in our reviews, we shall wear nothing but white. I was actually going to do that today and I forgot. But wearing David's jacket, so.
Yeah, I was going to wear my flight suit, but it started raining and I was like, it's too cold to wear that.
Yes, I think it's spring. Yeah, September's first month of spring, I think.
Yeah, it's very rainy here. That's what spring's like in Melbourne, or Melbourne in general is very rainy.
And then most of this episode is basically we're getting everyone on the Mythrake in the VR world, and you get some character development. I really do like all the stuff between the fake family. And then you've got the remainders of the Mythrake on the run from Mother in the present, which it's pretty interesting. At least we're seeing more of how they work and operate and their character interactions. So it's just building the world a little bit more.
Yeah. And it's interesting that like it's actually Marcus's dream that we're visiting the past. So I don't know. There's a lot of like dream sequences that are happening for the characters. I guess it's like really good like way, like you said, of character development to kind of fill up the space and kind of see what's going on instead of like what's immediately happening in front of us and try to figure out what drives them.
Oh, and then the kids make an escape. So Campion turns on father, locks him away in the silo. The kids all run for it. Paul gets separated because he's looking for the mouse, and that's basically where that storyline ends. The other kids get found by father, and we get another golem creature. So yeah.
It's really cheeky the way that I guess the kids are acting because the androids are trying so desperately hard to take care of them, and I can sympathize with that as a mother.
Just keep trying to get themselves killed.
Yeah, it's something that I can definitely understand would be a struggle. Like, what are the kids' motivations to listen to a authority figure if they're not their mother or father?
I think that'll be interesting if that's where they keep going with the kids subplot, is just this complete rejection of authority on both sides where they just go off and make their own faction.
We also get to see the cruelty which is experienced by the atheist child soldiers, the way that they're brainwashed and just used as cannon fodder and thrown into war.
Yeah.
With the weird backpacks and stuff like that, amplifying their strength and speed.
And the guy who's, I don't know, it's like their commander or whatever, riling him up, it just looks like he's got some kind of like demon, like growth, some loaf on his head. What is that? What is that about?
Yeah. It's
really terrible tattoos.
Yeah. It's like from the same tattooist as Fifield, probably.
Yeah.
With like the barcodes.
But yeah, it's very much using some very broad symbolic language in terms of costumes and sets and stuff that, well, the Mithraic people, they're all in the white and everything's all clean and modern and nice. And then the atheists, everyone's wearing black and it's all apocalyptic and crap and miserable. And it's just, okay, no shades of gray here. There's literally no shades of gray here, Ridley. You did it. You done did it. Thanks, Ridley Scott.
Actually, the third episode is directed by Luke Scott, I believe.
Thanks, Luke Scott.
But it's just like Dad, you know?
Well, I mean, it's not the director. It's definitely down to showrunner and cinematographers and all of that. It's a collaborative effort. Thanks, everybody.
I think there's been an effective use of sets. So you know how I was complaining about the CGI before? Now they kind of use it in a very sparing sort of way so that when they're going around the destruction of like the ark that had fallen to the planet and Mother is like flying about and they see like fires and everything, like that whole scene is CG, but they've done it in a way where it's not focused on for too long. So you're like, we see a crash. And then they effectively use like the very small sort of sets, like the cave, having all of the, the actors like crammed in. They've all got lights shining at their faces, which
very
is
effective.
the way that people would act with torches in real life. They usually be pointing it somewhere. But it is effective in, lighting the actors' faces and having focus on people who are talking. It's it's a cheap way of filming, and I don't mean that in an insulting way. I'm just saying that it's very creative because they obviously have a limited budget with the show.
I honestly feel like this episode looks and feels more expensive than the first two, and I don't know if that's because Luke Scott was directing or what, but
they're not paying Ridley, they're paying Luke, so they're able to spend more money on CG.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, direct is cheaper, or because well, I mean, they've both got a history with commercials and TV and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It could just be a budgetary thing that they did actually have more for episode 3. But this one, I feel like we're getting a more unique visual setting. We got a lot of different sets and set pieces in this episode alone. The way it's lit, the way it's shot, I do appreciate this a lot more than what we got in the first 2 episodes. I don't really know why, but I do.
I like even the way they've done when she's like pinching the antibiotics
Mm,
um from the ship and like all the little tubes and everything. Like they've done well to kind of fill up the whole place.
yeah,
No space is wasted. There's always something going on. Even when they're down in this cave, you kind of see the scratches on the walls and stuff like that. Um, Nearly every like freeze frame shot kind of looks like what's that Reddit called something Renaissance?
oh, accidental renaissance.
Yeah. It looks like that. Every single freeze frame looks
It
like it.
does. It definitely, there's something about the composition and lighting. There is this sort of is it Caravaggio or
Yeah.
Rembrandt or someone like that, someone who's very good with shadow. I think that's something that we're missing a lot in modern television. I don't know if it's just because of cameras or whatever, especially the MCU. It lacks a lot of really deep, rich blacks. But this show, especially in this episode, because I think episode 1 was a little flat, but this is a bit more rich, or at least to my eyes, it seems like it is.
Mm. I like how Mother just casually shoves her hand into the robot and just rips out the CPU.
Get the job done.
It's like the reverse chest burster.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, why would she care? It doesn't mean anything. But not to go on a tangent, but in Transformers, they see themselves as very much alive and as people. And so in Transformers Prime, which I'm watching again on Netflix, I really love it. Um, yeah, Bulkhead turns to this kid, Miko, and he's like, "Oh, look away," because he's about to rip the chest out of a Decepticon, and she's just like, "Nah, why would I do that? I want to see giant robots kill each other." But I just sort of had that thought of, "Oh yeah," because to him that's really violent and gruesome. Like you wouldn't want to, if you had to do that to another human being, you wouldn't want a kid seeing that. But no, it's just robots, but they don't see themselves that way.
Yeah. I guess like a lot of the on-screen brutalism is reserved for the androids in this. Like
That's the easiest way to do it, especially in cartoons. That
even the way Mother kind of like blows up humans, they kind of just blood burst.
yeah. Oh,
There's
that was what
nothing.
I was gonna say before is somehow she's able to target a sonic weapon so precisely that when one of those golem creatures is jumping onto the teenage girl's back, she's able to get the golem but not the girl.
I noticed that too, and I was like, hmm.
Okay, okay. Why just give a friggin' Superman laser vision? Just don't bother with the whole screaming type business. I mean, if she has to,
Symbolism of the banshee.
yeah, I guess. Laser eyes are not symbolic of anything, I don't think.
Except for maybe Superman.
Not yet, though. You know what? Give it some time, and I think there will be a day where, centuries from now, the laser vision or any of those comic book superpowers, that will be like classic cultural symbolism, evoking ancient myths of Superman.
Or Cyclops or something.
What's that other sort of, yeah, Homelander.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh my god, the boys.
Woo. Yeah, I can't look at milk the same way anymore.
No. Um, so with Campion and the kids, they've kind of um, pulled the wool over father's eyes in
Mm,
order to run away. Um, the kids kind of like the way they dress again. So I think that they're very inspired by like Mobius or the way uh, the designs of like the characters with like the headgear and stuff. They look very medieval.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole costume design for everybody is medieval, but with these modern twists. And I really love that. I'm definitely a fan of the Mithraic costumes, and I think what makes it so appealing is okay. So I think it's a just like a jerkin, you know, that kind of tunic thing. It's just not a cut you see in modern clothing. But if you are to render that in modern materials and you add all these different finishing techniques that make it look contemporary, zippers, the armor of the top, that's just really exciting to me as a costumer. And then the kids, it's less evident to an extent simply because the textiles they're using are just a little bit more mundane. So they just look like they've stepped out of a fantasy or you know, historical piece. So yeah, just put more zippers on it. There you go. That'll fix it.
I find it interesting the line that Campion uses that he says that, you know, mother's love is not real because she isn't real. Where again, you know, visiting the concept of love through the eyes of an AI, like her programming would say that, you know, she has to like take care of the children and take care of the family. The same with father. Does that make their love any different from that of a mother or father, like a
Yeah,
human
and I
mother or
wish
father?
they would go into that a little bit more, and also that the androids weren't so clearly fucked up. Because I think that's the problem is just I don't think it's a fair contrast here because I mean both sides have their flaws, but I feel like most people and myself included are more inclined to feel empathetic towards Travis Fimmel. Yeah, um, like they got a more sympathetic story where Mother especially is just this unhinged bitch, but sorry if you came my neighbors. Uh, uh, Yeah. Oh, reminds me of Walter. So Walter has this sense of duty and loyalty and devotion that far surpasses anything of a human being. You know, he will be able to provide for you in a way that a human being, most human beings probably can't. And that brings up this question of, well, is it real? And what does real mean, especially in those contexts? Because I think when you are in a relationship with a human being, there's always this kind of give and take, whereas an android is give, give, give. And what does that do to you? And is that unnatural? And yeah, I think those sorts of discussions are very interesting. We're not getting a lot of that in Race by Wolves, at least not yet. But I hope they go into that a little bit more.
Yeah. I also feel like it's definitely feels Crusader like, with like they're on a mission and they seem to be going or heading towards some sort of end point which fulfills their prophecy. We're seeing it pile up bit by bit. I think the thing that seems to annoy most of them is, or annoy the main characters being, is that they're faking their faith along the way, which they've effectively been able to do so far. But there's this underlying current of like this other alternate mythology that's happening on the planet that neither faith or neither belief system knows about, neither the atheists or neither the Mithraics. And we're introduced to that with Paul wandering off, Campion wandering off. I don't know what it all means yet. There is a symbolism there with the dolls, and I can't figure out what that is yet. They keep
Blow it.
focusing on it.
But I just paused on a minute. It's 40 minutes in, where Mother discovers that the kids have disappeared, her eyes have disappeared, and she just screams. Just, you're a robot. Why are you screaming? But
She's
it's the weirdest
emotional.
thing where she's just like, ah! And then Father's like, hang on. By the way, hello. I hate her. I hate her so much. She just sucks. Everything else is great. Let's get rid of her.
Oh, you're harsh.
Brutal. And a weird bendy spine. I'm gonna move it. I just don't want to look at it. There we go. There. Move it away from the screen. Don't want to look at it.
Um, I'm seeing in here, like, you know, the mouse being gifted, and they're talking about, oh, I don't want to kill the mouse. I don't care if you say I'm not worthy.
Oh,
It's
it
like,
makes me weak. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting that like we get a glimpse into like how barbaric their religion is.
Yeah, and we have a lot of examples of that, even in Christianity, the idea of animal sacrifice, and oh my god, there's a lot of animal sacrifice in the Bible. Good lord. Just keep slaughtering more sheep. God will listen eventually. Maybe he's not into sheep, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
Who said he was into sheep? I
and
guess.
it's funny because then he talks about um, humanity and his son being the Lamb of God, and then saying that like humanity are like sheep, and it's like, is there something that you're trying to tell us here?
And you're gonna make sacrifices out of sheep. It's interesting the haircuts on I'm just gonna call the imposters. It's much easier to refer to them as that. And you got Travis with business in the front, party in the back, and then Jenna with the she got that. Oh god, what's those South African rappers?
Yeah.
They're in Chappie. She's got like the fringe that comes back to like here. Yeah, it's very punk, and yet this is supposed to be a very conservative society. So,
I just can't get over the fact that the uh, what you call it, the the head of the Mithraics kind of looks like Richard Branson.
yes. It's got a kingly look to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that they went for these very extreme, outlandish haircuts. But then it made me think, I guess we don't know when this is set. Culturally, that might be considered normal and conservative at some point. Which, please, dear God, I hope not. Never ever.
Well, they seem to be some sort of fighting class. Any of those who have short hair. So maybe it was like battlefield chic.
Yeah. Battlefield Earth chic. Okay, there's no dreadlocks, but you know what I mean.
I kind of like the Carbos silos. They kind of look like the top of a rocket. I don't know whether I mentioned it before.
Look at where are they? Little egg-shaped places. There we go. Yeah. Little missile silos. I think. That's all my notes.
um, it's I wanted to speak about mother trying to, father trying to comfort mother. Like, you're a good mother. You weren't intentionally poisoning the children. The Carbos were poisoning the children. And it was like, isn't it the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so suspicious to me. If they're really going to make us believe that these advanced androids aren't able to detect radiation and that you went on that long, I don't know. That's asking me to suspend my disbelief quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand why Campion seems to be immune to it.
And that's the other thing. It's radiation. You don't have any kind of resistance to that naturally. So I don't know what that's supposed to be. Maybe he's part robot.
Who knows? It's very peculiar, like him being like, I guess, the last one to breathe and being the last survivor, so to speak.
He actually does remind me of Paul in Dune, just that kind of chosen one thing. I know he's probably going to go on to be more significant in the story, most likely.
Mm. Yeah, and it's like they've only got that one piece of technology, which is that little lander, the little pod. Um, who knows why that is the case? Like, why did she crash the whole ship? Couldn't she just have killed everyone and kept the other big ship?
Yeah, isn't that useful? Just where do you
Yeah.
go? If this is the only habitable planet in, who knows how many light years.
Yeah, and I guess she's like successfully killing off all the children. So you think that she would want like an escape plan?
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know. To me, there are a few plot holes to a degree, but I think like Ridley Scott tends to like his crashed ships and derelicts and stuff like that. So
It's probably going to factor in again at some point.
I must admit, the explosion was very pretty.
Mm. I think overall, I I am more optimistic about this show. At first, watching the trailers, watching the first episode, I just sort of went, "Oh God, where is this going? This seems very over the top and beating of the head with a particular message." But now they've added the full cast, or at least I assume this is the full cast of characters. We're getting more twists and turns, and it's a little bit more intriguing. And I actually, think the Mythrate characters are quite interesting. The kids, they've all got their own little storylines going on, and that's always the sort of like that bottle, like a bottle episode, or like there's a word for it, just where a movie just takes place in one location. It's about the character interactions, and we get a lot of complicated characters here. There's a lot of themes being explored that are interesting. So, yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes.
Hmm. Yeah. Hopefully we get better at remembering the character names.
I know. Well, that's the thing is, like, I'm not really interested in those details. It's more about the symbolic stuff, the religious, the subtext. That's the way I am with my other reviews too. Is I've got a script in front of me with all the characters' names and stuff. Because that's not what I focus on. That's not the important thing.
But we will take notes next time. We'll be
I
better.
had notes. I just don't have notes on the characters' names. Tried. Forgot.
So don't forget to join us for next time when we cover episode 4 and 5. Episode 4 is called Nature's Course, and episode 5 is called Infected Memory. And I feel like
Put that in my notes so I remember next.
So I feel like these two episodes that it's starting to really come into its own. It was off to a bumpy start, which is a bit sad because like it was started with Ridley Scott. But he did bring, the shock and the gore factor, which is what he's known for.
Yeah.
And Luke Scott did bring the sort of like family dynamics and community feeling, which he did with The Last Supper. So I feel like all of these directors are playing to their strengths. I'm going to look up who wrote and directed episodes 4 and 5 for our next coverage of this to make sure that we make some very good comparisons. I'm reading the summary here and it says Marcus and Sue. So what's her name?
Because that's her name in the credits there.
Mm.
D'Angelo, but well, because she has two names, I guess. So are they referring to her old name? I don't know. I don't know anymore.
I'm gonna have to look it up. I promise I'll be more organized next time. I'm sorry, but this week I'm kind of all over the place. I've been very exhausted. We're into our 5th week of lockdown now, and they've extended it for another 6 weeks. So I'm feeling kind of just tired in general. I can't wait to be able to leave my so-called bubble because I miss going to things like, somewhere other than my suburb, going to the art gallery, things like that. But I think that'll be not for a very long time, considering everything that's happening in the world.
Yeah, it's a shame that the East Coast got hit as bad as it did, thanks to Gladys Berejiklian. But like the other half of Australia, we're doing just fine, and it's the weirdest.
Yeah, it's like life has gone on over there, isn't it? You guys are going out for dinner and...
Yeah. When people talk about COVID in America or on the East Coast, I just go, oh, right, yeah, keep forgetting. Because right now I could go to the library, I could go shopping, I don't know. I went to the movies. I saw Tenet. It wasn't very good, but at least I was in a cinema.
It's a bit like that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really lucky at my studio. I've got a really big projector, so I'm not really missing much in terms of
Oh, very nice.
cinema. And I buy my own snacks, so I save a lot of money.
Yes. We leave the house. Come on, there's nothing out there for you.
Yeah, all the things I want to do actually just involve being at home, so it wouldn't be much of a change for me. Um, but yes, so you can find me on, of course, Studio Yutani or as Mother 9000 on Twitch, which I haven't been broadcasting recently or lately. And Connor?
I am on traviandesigns.com, TRAVIAN, or the Alien Prequels by Minute on Facebook. So over there I review, as you can imagine, the Alien Prequels, Prometheus, and Alien Covenant, 1 minute per episode. And I'm very, very close to finishing Prometheus after 3 years it must be at this point. And yeah, Covenant should be available to non-Patreon listeners very soon.
Okay.
Oh, and I forgot, I've also got I'll
Legacy.
Yeah, it is exclusive that I've got another podcast coming very soon, 60 Seconds to Comply, which will be a RoboCop Movies by Minute podcast.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Oh yeah.
And I love the name of it as well, because like
Yeah. Can't take credit for it. My co-host Simon thought of that, but
oh really?
yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah, there's just so much great content coming out, and we're going to be in for a dry spell in 6 to 9 months when everyone is completely out of stuff that they were going to release.
I don't know. I mean, I'm watching Deep Space Nine and Transformers Prime. So one's like 30 years old, the other one's 10 years old. So it just gives you some time to catch up and go through and review things. Well, actually, I will be doing a review of Tron Uprising, which is another cartoon that's about 10 years old. So it feels like everyone is kind of dipping back into the older stuff.
Yeah, funny you should say that. I've been watching the new version of Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Mm.
And that is like in a way an Australian sci-fi. So I've been like looking at old Australian sci-fi books and shows. There was another one that I was watching.
Can't spell Australian without alien.
Yes, that's
Sort of.
right. I was watching one called The Stranger, which was also based in Australia about an alien that kind of landed on a planet, on the planet Earth, and then it was landed in Australia. He kind of rocked up at someone's doorstep, and he speaks a foreign language and flies a spaceship that makes that sound. So it's like really 50s sort of sci-fi. It's in black and white, so it's like super old. So I'm looking at even older stuff.
And yeah, video games are still coming out at a pretty normal pace now, but just slow down. Give me a chance to catch up.
Yeah, well, it takes about 10 years for a game to come out, or at least any decent ones. Yeah, at a good polish. I'm really looking forward to the Alien game whenever that comes out. It's taken on a couple of different forms now. Apparently, it was supposed to come out looking a lot like Colonial Marines, which is the old one, which, don't do that again.
Yeah, isn't that one that like was really bad and sucked and no one liked?
Yeah, so now that they're trying to make it a bit more open world, kind of like Borderlands, apparently. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'd be interested to know how that works.
Yeah, I want to get together with my friends and shoot them virtually. So
Yeah.
at least I'll be able to do that. Anyway, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. This is Mother signing off.
This is Colson signing off.